Hello, and welcome to the Memorial Day edition of Triggered Treasures. Today, we've got a real treat in store for you, and it's one of my favorite pieces in my collection, and it's got some really interesting history going back to World War II, and the history of the firearm actually goes even further back than that. So today, what we're talking about is the Norwegian M1914, or what a lot of people call the Kongsberg Colt, because that's the factory where it was made in Norway. So on this particular piece, I actually did a display on it in the 2025 Colt Collectors Association, which Eric Olson did an interview with me at the time in Concord, North Carolina. And as you may have seen in the back over here, I have the Norwegian flag and a couple of printouts from the book that I got called the Kongsberg Colton, which is all in Norwegian. But that's another story. So this was licensed in 1914, hence the name. It was John Browning's patent, but his agent in Europe was FN, so it was actually licensed through FN Europe through John Browning in the United States in 1914. The Norwegians went through trials with the 1902 38 ACP before this, didn't like it, and then Colt sent over some government models for them to test out. And just like here in the United States, they went through some extensive testing to see how it would work. And of course, they adopted it in 1914 and made it all the way through, probably up until about 1958. So obviously in 1940 through 1945, the war was going on over in Europe, and the Germans were occupying Norway. And what people may not know is that Norway had the most amount of German troops in any country for occupation. They had over 400,000 at one point in Norway. And of course, they wanted to protect that strait into Norway because they were getting their iron ore and steel from Sweden, and that's how Sweden maintained their neutrality. But so anyway, they made roughly about 8,000 between 1940 and 1945. And there was a couple of years where they made none. And so these were still made under occupation. And it was only within the last year, 1945, that the Germans applied their Waffenamt stamp to the slides. And it's a very well-known and documented serial number range, and this is one of those. And we'll get a close-up of that for you here in a second. I was able to have a conversation with the people at the Kongsberg factory, or Vapenfabrik, and they were able to provide me a letter of authenticity for the serial number of the firearm that I have. This was made at the factory in 1945, and as you can see, the type of weapon they listed as 11.25 millimeter because they're using the metric system. It was sighted in on April 11th, proof fired the 12th, final inspection was the 13th, and then on the 17th it was shipped to the Army Commando Norwegian, which is the Norwegian army that was commanded by the Germans during the occupation. And you see it gives it the serial number and the serial number range that has the Waffenamt 920, of which this is one. And I haven't seen any pictures or documentation that shows the Germans shooting or carrying the M1914. Rather, it was given to the Norwegian army, who was under command of the Germans, who decided to fight and betray their own country. The Germans appointed a governor for Norway at the time, and his last name was Quisling, and he was summarily executed after the war in 1945, and his name became synonymous with those betraying the country. The other great resource I was able to get was a book on the Kongsberg Colton by Carl Hanevik. For those of you who know the 1911 book by Clausen, this is similar for the Norwegian firearms. It goes all the way back to the 1890s into the early 1900s for the testing, and then through the development of the M1914 and all the variations it went through. This one was also, he signed it for me and sent it from Norway. Now, one of the pictures that you've seen behind me before is of these guys here. And if you notice, they are all shooting left-handed. When I first saw this, I thought, oh, they just must have reversed the negative when they put this on there. But the description actually says that they were practicing left-handed with the firearm at this time. Not a bad practice to do. So like I said, this goes through all kinds of documentation, factory letters, the variations in magazines, hammers, all that stuff, just as Clausen's does. And these actually right here show some of the documents that we're licensing through FN Europe, through Browning and Colt in the USA. And of course, as you can see, this is all in Norwegian. But Google Translate works really well if you want to read some pieces. And it has some great illustrations. You can see there the barrel and the markings. And that's one of the things that they did differently from the United States, is they put the last 3 serial numbers of the firearm on almost every single little part. And then here it shows again the numbers 1940-45 and the 920 that were made in 1945. And to verify what my letter says, you can see that on the 17th of April, my serial number falls within that range there. One last thing I wanted to add about the book was the last pictures in the back of the book about showing female sailors in London 1942 training with the 1914 and the 1911 A1. And very interesting, they show them with some submachine guns, and oddly enough, you look at which finger she's using to pull the trigger. Again, my assumption that they may have had some shorter fingers. She's actually got her middle finger on the trigger. A couple of other really cool things I was able to find were some period magazines that were put out about the occupation in Norway. This one was done about the initial occupation in Norway. It shows pictures of the Germans flying in, shooting some of the Swedish Navy vessels down, and more Germans coming in on horseback, blowing stuff up. And then there's some of the German planes coming in. The other thing I found was, this is the liberation after the war. And this is a really cool picture folio put together, and it was actually given to somebody June 18th of 47, celebrating the liberation of 7th of May through June 30th of 1945. And so this shows the celebration. You can see all the Norwegian flags flying, and there's the effigy of a German soldier there. A lot of cool stuff, and there's one with the king of Norway coming back in. So a lot of cool stuff in these too. I wish I could show them all to you, but that would take too much time. The last two interesting things I have that surround this firearm is, this is like our national defense medal. It was given to soldiers and civilians alike who participated in the defense of Norway between April 40 and May 1945. The other is this period holster that was used for the M1914. And it's got, this is Swedish made, and you can see the marks right there. It was not uncommon for them to adapt whatever holster they had to fit the weapons that they had at the time. Okay, so we're out here and we're gonna put a few rounds through this 1945 Kongsberg Colt made in Norway right at the end of World War II when the Germans were occupying Norway. That's pretty cool, and it works just as good as today as it did 70 some years ago. I hope you all had a great Memorial Day weekend. Remember to like, subscribe, and be safe out there. Until next time, we'll see you from Triggered Treasures Firearms.